Hello, this is Energy Law Prof, and I'm going to say a little bit today about a topic that's very important for most legal professionals, for law reviews, for legal academics, and really for professionals across many disciplines, which is how to use Twitter to engage with other people that are doing research, that are doing work in your area, and to demonstrate your expertise. So first, what I'd like to do is talk about some basic principles. So one, you want to have a Twitter account, just like you would have a LinkedIn account, just like if you were a legal academic, you would have an SSRN or Google Scholar account. It's important to have an account so that people know who you are. Second, I recommend that you use lists to learn from Twitter. There's a lot that you can learn from Twitter from people with expertise. The biggest mistake I see Twitter users make is just opening up the app and starting to scroll, or just going to twitter.com and starting to scroll. Instead, you should be using lists to get the most out of Twitter to make sure that you see the information you're looking for. Third, I think that one of the best things that you can do with Twitter is supporting your colleagues. And I would say that's colleagues broadly construed. That's a really valuable way to use your Twitter account. Then finally, I'm going to offer some maybe more idiosyncratic advice that's just sort of my view, but I think as some rough guidelines, following other people is a great idea. I'd recommend following anyone you would follow on LinkedIn, and sharing more material. Not having long periods of time where you don't post anything to Twitter is probably a good idea. But then generally, there's not a need to share your opinion on every issue, and there's probably some costs to doing so. So, more following, more sharing interesting information, probably less offering your own opinion. And I'll talk about some of the reasons I think that. So first, you want to open an account so people know who you are. Here's an example of Professor Sauter. She is coming to SMU Law School next year. We're very fortunate to have her. She's an expert on mergers and acquisition, on corporate governance, etc. And you can see that her Twitter profile makes that clear. And so just like a LinkedIn page, just like a bio page on a firm website or on a law school website, that makes that clear. And she's also included a link to her papers, and that can be a great way to share your research with other people. So even if you never open Twitter again, it can be a good idea to open it once, to start an account so that you have that professional presence. And that tells people who you are. It also lets people tag and link to you. So you'll notice that when SMU announced that Professor Sauter was coming to our school, instead of saying Christina Sauter, who people would have had to go and look on Google or LinkedIn to find out who that was, they actually just tagged her with @Professor Sauter. And the advantage of that is that because she had an account, anybody could go and look and find her research. So you are really giving yourself more opportunities to connect with people who might be interested in your research by ensuring that you have a Twitter page, in the way that it links to your biography and your work. I should note that I'll include this link throughout much of this presentation because I earlier wrote some things on how to use Twitter as a legal academic that are very applicable to the principles I'm talking about here for using Twitter as a legal professional or just as a professional. Okay, second, consider tweeting. So, as I said, it's worth it to open an account just to have an account there that you have a presence on Twitter. But even if, if you never want to open it again, go ahead and start an account. But if you're willing to tweet, here are some of the kind of very easy things that you could do. So this is an example of a couple tweets from another one of my amazing colleagues, Professor Offit, who's an expert in criminal law. And you can see two kinds of very easy tweets here. One is when you are tagged in a tweet, and you can see that SMU Law has tagged @Anna Offit, you should probably retweet that. And that goes for any circumstance where you're tagged. If your institution tags you as having done something cool, if a journalist tags you as giving a quote in an article, If one of your colleagues tags you as having put out a new piece of research or been quoted in something, you probably want to retweet that. In fact, they probably expect that you will interact with them in that way. You don't really want to leave them hanging. You want to go ahead and retweet that. So that's one easy thing that you can do. The other thing that you can do is when you have a new piece come out, you've spent so much time on this. You wrote a book or you wrote an article. At the minimum, just why not tweet out a link to that so that people can go access that. They know that you did that. And so that is another one of the sort of very easy things that you can do. Even if you're not going to use Twitter very often, you can at least retweet when you're tagged and tweet when you've come out with a new piece. Now, if you want to do a little bit more with Twitter, and there is so much expertise on Twitter, so many things that you can learn, I recommend that you use lists to learn from Twitter. The biggest mistake I see people use with Twitter is they just go to twitter.com and start scrolling, or they just open the Twitter app and just start scrolling. And that's a very bad idea because, of course, Twitter is basically designed to give you as many ads as possible. So it includes a lot of ads, and it also is basically just designed to suck you in and have you spend as much time scrolling those ads as possible. And so instead, what you want to do are use lists. Lists are just a group of different people that you want to see their tweets, and all you see is their tweets without ads, just in chronological order. So it's not designed to suck you in. It just helps you know what they've said. So here's here's my phone. I did this just a few minutes ago. Imagine that, you go into Twitter. Now, when you first go into Twitter, it's going to give you these ads and stuff designed to suck you in. So this is a chainsaw. This is not relevant to me. Now, if I go to my lists, you can see this is a list of some of the law professors at SMU. All of a sudden, I'm getting very relevant information. How do you go to that? You go to lists, and then you can see you can have lots of lists from other people that you made yourself, and then you can pin those lists to your home page. So instead of going through the default For You tweets or something else like that, you can actually just go through your list. So I can go through this SMU law list. It's just the tweets I'm looking for from the people that I want to follow, and it's all in order. Now, you can make your own lists. I would recommend that, when you're first experimenting with this, maybe better to make that list private, because that means you can kind of add people and drop people off, and you're not making some statement about whether they're worth reading their tweets or not. It's just so that you can experiment with looking at the tweets from different people. And so I just showed you adding a couple of our new professors, Carlos Chapman and Christina Sauter, how you would add them to a list like that. Now, so basically, the advantage of those is that you're going to spend less time, wasting your time going through looking at ads, and you're just going to get to see the tweets that you want to see in order. Now, you're probably going to want to build multiple lists for when you have different amounts of time to give to Twitter. So maybe you haven't been able to sign in for a couple weeks or a month, but there's a couple of people that do research right in your area, or they're your boss, or for some reason you want to see everything they've tweeted over the past month since you last logged in. Well, you go to that must-read list, you scroll through it, and you can get through that very quickly, unlike trying to scroll through your whole feed. The other big advantage of this, and I'll talk about this in a second, I think, and this is just my opinion, when you're thinking about who to follow, following is a little bit more of a social connection thing. You're never, once you follow enough people, you're never going to be able to read every one of all of their tweets. That's just not a reasonable goal. And so there's going to be a lot of people in that list. And there may be some people in that list, that are very important to you. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a close friend, but maybe they tweet about things that you don't necessarily need to read about every day. And so, if you don't, for whatever reason, need to see every one of your mom's tweets, well, you can use those lists to focus on the tweets that you're most interested, and you don't have to go through the social awkwardness of, unfollowing your mom. So that is, I think, one reason that it's much better to use lists to focus on which tweets you absolutely need to see, which tweets you'll see if you have more time to look at them, and that can really help you get the most out of Twitter. Okay, now what I think that's for learning from Twitter. Now, in terms of what you can use Twitter for, I think one of the most important things you can do is supporting your colleagues. And so, what I mean by that is tag and retweet them. When they have some, they put out something and they tweet about it, go ahead and retweet them. Talk about the research they're doing. Maybe they haven't gotten around to tweeting their new article yet. Well, you can tweet it for them. And I think when we think about who are your colleagues, you want to construe that very broadly. You might think, oh, well, they're, at another university, or they're, actually I disagree with them about some things, etc. Those are still your colleagues, and you want to think about that extremely broadly. Generally, there's far more to gain from cooperation and starting that scholarly discussion. That's part of the whole point of developing expertise in an area and developing a engaged conversation with other professionals in your area. Everybody understands that just because you retweet somebody's work, that doesn't mean you endorse every part of it. You may completely disagree with it, but you're saying, hey, there's this other person who I respect out there. They're putting out this interesting information or arguments, and so here it is. And so I would say that the more engagement you do, generally, the better. Okay, now let me offer some possibly more idiosyncratic views. Not everyone would share these, certainly, but these are some rough guidelines that you might think about when using Twitter. Okay, generally, there's not a lot of downside to following more people within reason. So, effectively, again, the way I would kind of look at it is, follow anybody that you would connect with on LinkedIn, plus anybody who is putting out interesting information in your area. You can try out. I would be very eager to try following new accounts. I would, on the other hand, be very hesitant to start unfollowing accounts because it's silly. Maybe it's just Twitter etiquette, but sometimes people can take that the wrong way. And everybody knows you don't have time to read the tweets from everyone you follow all the time. And so remember, the way you're actually getting information is through scrolling lists. So there's not much cost to connecting with a few more people on Twitter. That's not a problem. When you have time, you'll read their tweets. When you don't, you won't. And so I think one mistake people make sometimes is they follow a bunch of people, unfollow a bunch of people. I would generally be ready to follow people, connect with people like you would be on LinkedIn or otherwise, but maybe be a little bit more hesitant to unfollow people, because usually that's not necessary. So I would say that in terms of how often you want to use Twitter, the main thing is you don't want to have long gaps in your use of it, just like, and this would be true if you had a blog or anything like that. And certainly I've been guilty of these things as well. You can find throughout this, you'll find lots of things I've been guilty of. But I would say that, ideally you'd be aiming to share some kind of interesting information, at least daily, if you're looking to sort of gradually connect with more people, but you don't want to be overwhelming at the same time. Now, other people would have very different views. Some people would say, oh no, it's totally fine to go, a year, 2 years without tweeting, and others would say, oh no, you should be tweeting, a few times a day. There's different tastes differ. So there's no right or wrong answers. I'm just saying that generally, I think it is good to engage somewhat regularly, and think about sharing information rather than just your opinion. It's one thing if your opinion comes with an underlying piece that explains why that opinion is, or if your opinion is shared with some new information that might be interesting. But remember, really the new thing that you're mostly bringing that people are looking for is that sort of interesting information. Now, I will say, you can actually get a lot of attention on Twitter through, stating bald opinions without any new information backing them or otherwise. But it's probably not the right kind of information. I do think there's such a thing as bad publicity, especially for professionals who are looking to maintain good relationships with a wide variety of people that can obviously, potentially be a negative. So, I would say that when I trying to follow accounts, typically I'm looking for someone that's going to present me with new information that might be potentially useful to me, and I think that's very common. So even if giving opinions is a very easy way to get attention and maybe even more followers. I do think that it has some downsides potentially professionally. And so I think ideally focusing on sharing information regularly is the way to go. If you want to see more about this, you can check out either that earlier post that I talked about, which is just called How to Academic Twitter. It's on my blog, energylawprof.com, or you can see these slides, of course, a version of these slides, which are there at that link, Twitter for Law Students.